Well, another typical day in Devils land. Simone Nemec scores another overtime winner. That's all he's good for. And all Luke Hughes is good for is dislocating his shoulder again. What is up with these brothers and their shoulders? How does this keep on happening?
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
When God put the Hughes brothers on this planet, what was going through his mind? All right, we're going to give these three brothers godlike hockey gifts, except none of them are going to have working shoulders. And we're going to find that out the hard way, right? How? I said I wanted him to spend a day in the press box, not the rest of the season. Oh my God. This is Locked On Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network in the world. We got a special episode today. Alex Chauvancy is joining us in a moment. He just entered the studio. We're going to break down a lot. Last night in Calgary, tonight in Edmonton. I don't even think we have to break down the Luke stuff because I've watched it a billion times. I still don't know how someone dislocates their shoulder on that, but Lenny Haminaho looked great. Other musings considering the state of the front office. Alex, you are joining right about now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. You got me?
Yeah, I got you. Welcome in.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Well, first and foremost, why don't you just introduce to our wonderful audience here who you are, where they can find you, and yeah.
Yeah, so I have my own Substack, Devils-related stuff. It's called Devils on the Rush. Also have a podcast that I do there usually couple of weeks with one of my best friends from grade school. You can find me on Twitter at AlexC_NJD and at NJD on the Rush. Have a lot of content coming out the next couple days, depending on what happens with the Luke Hughes injury. Hopefully it's nothing too serious, but it doesn't sound good at this point. And I got a busy schedule until the Olympic break, so a lot of stuff to come.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us. And I mean, Frank Saravalli, now granted, it is Frank Saravalli we're talking about, so take it with a grain of salt, but he said it looked to be a dislocated shoulder the second the game ended. It was such a tonal whiplash because you have a sick overtime goal, and the second you're like, all right, this team is not in a great spot, but they got 2 points. They're not fully out of it. You go on Twitter and you see that, you're just like, oh, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised that the news came so quickly after the game. And I saw what you said just before I hopped on here. Like, I still don't understand how he dislocated his shoulder on that play. It was just like a light jersey pull, like a little tug of the jersey. I really don't understand how that happened. He had been playing better the last few games too. And where he is right now, you want him playing and developing. So it'll be a tough blow, I think, despite what a lot of fans may be saying. But they'll just have to make do without him. I mean, I guess that probably changes what happens with Dougie Hamilton. We'll see what happens with him in the trade rumors. Kovacevic will probably be a regular now. Nemec definitely won't be coming out of the lineup anytime soon because you're going to need all 6 of these guys to contribute with Luke out of the lineup. But it took away from what was a good win for the Devils. They definitely needed that one, especially since Calgary had just traded Rasmus Anderson. That was really not a game that you could afford to drop. So getting 2 points out of that game was pretty crucial.
Absolutely. And even though it wasn't necessarily the best showing from the Devils 5-on-5, they outshot Calgary by a healthy enough margin. They were good defensively. And the main story, other than the overtime winner, which was pretty nice. I mean, it's amazing. Simone Nemec is such a frustrating player, but this guy just has a knack for scoring in big moments. And how about the play by Jesper Bratt to kick it out from the circle or to the circle? Jack spots Nemec, and instead of just slapping it home, he fakes, he winds up, and then slides it right past Devin Cooley. Great ending to the game, but that's not the main focus for me. Last night, we had a rookie lap from Lenny Haminaho, and I really liked what I saw, and I feel like that's pretty much a consensus among Devils fans, Devils reporters. I believe through 2 periods yesterday, he outchanced Calgary 9-0 when his line was on the ice. We knew coming in that Lenny's best skill was up here. Intelligent hockey player. I think we've seen a lot just from one game that would show that, yeah, that seems to be the case. And I'm excited to see how he's going to grow and get better on this team over the coming days and weeks. And needless to say, you can't send him down for Glendening or any of these other guys anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if Luke Glendening comes back into the lineup against Edmonton tonight, it's probably going to be a rough outing for the Devils. That's the last person I would want going up against Connor McDavid, because they'll try to get McDavid out against Glendening. But I can't imagine Keefe is going to take Lenny out of the lineup after last night against Calgary. Even though he didn't come away with any points, he probably should have had at least one assist, whether it was the Jack Hughes chance that he set up or one to Brendan Dillon a little bit before that. He played really well. I didn't think he showed any hesitation when he was in the game. Sometimes in an NHL debut, player looks a little bit nervous, but I didn't think that was the case with him. I thought he looked really confident from the get-go. I like where he is right now with Arseny Gritsyuk and Cody Glass. They were the Devils' best line in that game. Scoring chances for that trio, I think after the whole game was said and done, was 7-0, and I think high danger chances were like 3-0, something like that. And Lenny individually, his numbers were really great last night too. So that was really, I thought it was a breath of fresh air, because the Devils have just needed some kind of injection into the forward group for the last how many ever weeks at this point. It might not be a trade, but yeah, it might not be a trade, but I think just bringing him up and getting someone a little bit younger, especially since Glendening now comes out of the lineup, I think it could be a breath of fresh air. And if he plays like that, I'd expect him to start accumulating points pretty quickly. I thought, Calgary's not the best team out there, so we'll see how he looks against tougher competition against Edmonton tonight, but that was definitely a really positive NHL debut for him.
I 100% agree. I was a fan of the pick when it was made. I've not been a fan of a majority of Tom Fitzgerald's picks. I feel like that's pretty consensus, but given where he was drafted in that spot, was it 58th overall in 23? I was a fan of everything from the value to the style of player that they ended up getting, and so far so good. But I said on this show yesterday, the Devils need to win 3 out of 4 games on this trip in order to really stay somewhat afloat. Tonight is the toughest one of the bunch. Edmonton is, of course, back-to-back Western Conference champions. No Leon Draisaitl for the Oilers tonight, though. And I guess you can say there's an opportunity. The Devils have played well in Edmonton the last few years. They already beat them once this year back home. Could we be in line for perhaps a Jake Allen, not revenge game? Oh my gosh. I always forget. He's never played for Edmonton. He feels like a guy that's absolutely played for Edmonton. You know who has played for Edmonton, though, is Connor Brown. So maybe pencil him in for a revenge goal in his old barn tonight.
Yeah, Connor Brown's had some good chances the last couple of games, too. I mean, he had that breakaway against Calgary last night, and I think Devin Cooley got a glove on it if he didn't fire it high. Yeah, so I think he just got a piece of that. So he has been playing well, too. The Devils have also had success against Tristan Jarry in the past when he was against the Penguins, and it looks like he's the starter for Edmonton tonight. So maybe that's something that they can take advantage of. I think I would obviously love a win against Edmonton, because then you have a chance of going 4-for-4 on the trip. But if you just come away, I think even with an overtime loss, that would probably be a positive, because then the final 2 games of this trip are Vancouver and Seattle, and Vancouver has been just god-awful lately. In Seattle, I don't really think they're as good as their record indicates. Those are definitely 2 winnable games. So we'll see what happens in Edmonton. I think they're probably going to have to lean on Jake Allen tonight, because they're playing on the second half of a back-to-back, and I'm pretty sure Edmonton did not play last night. I think the last game was Sunday, so they'll be a little bit rested. But tough task. But like you said, they've always played well. Not always, but they've had some good success against the Oilers in recent years. And I think Jack Hughes is due. He played really well against Calgary. He just couldn't get a goal. I think he finished with like 7 shots on goal, and he had 9 or 8 scoring chances somewhere around there. So if he puts that kind of volume up, eventually something's going to go in for him.
You'd certainly hope so. Jack has been, you can tell he's certainly adjusting back to full health. You'll see these moments from him. I thought the Seattle game, he looked most like himself. And then yesterday again, just you can see bits and pieces of the Jack Hughes we all know and love slowly coming back, but it's a 10 p.m. puck drop tonight on TNT. Just got confirmation from officially the TNT account. John Forsland, Eddie Olczyk on the call tonight. A nice breath of fresh air from the usual.
Yeah, that is a nice one.
Yeah. I just thought it was so funny that Don LaGreca cannot pronounce anybody's name correctly and got Haminaho right every single time. Like, good on you, man.
Yeah, I was thinking about that during the game too. I guess he must have put a lot of practice in before. Even Danico was pretty good with Lenny's name. Yeah, that was a surprise. Don will call, I don't know, Timo Meyer Jack Hughes sometimes, or vice versa, but he got Haminaho's name right, so it's pretty impressive.
I say this, I really like Don LaGreca. He's a great human being. It was the Philly game right after Thanksgiving where they blew that lead. I think he called every Flyers defenseman Emil Andre at a certain point in time, and I was like, oh my God, this is not good.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a couple of blunders here and there, but I feel like he actually has gotten a little bit better recently. I mean, it's like Rachel last year. She struggled a little bit with the broadcast, but she's been fantastic this season. She's been really, really good. So, sometimes it's just the rookie season applies to everyone.
Oh, absolutely. I broadcast for a living. That's what I want to do in life. I've screwed up before.
Yeah, it happens.
I always love to tell people my sophomore year at Mizzou, I was on a Mizzou, South Carolina baseball call. Gamecock player pops it up. I look up and I said, oh, that ball's out of play. I lost it in the sun. My color commentator looks at me and goes, it was actually caught by the second baseman.
Yeah, it happens.
So we're going to take a quick break. When we return, I want to talk through some of the finishing woes with the Devils, because at times it seems like the entire group is snake bitten. And last night they had plenty of grade A chances that they couldn't finish. And it's just been, for a team that has Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, Timo Meyer, even with the system not necessarily being conducive to their success and the lack of talent around them perhaps not being conducive to their success, I think it's odd that almost everybody's seeming to have a down year finishing, and you're the oracle on a lot of that stuff. So I think it would be really enlightening just to hear what your thoughts are. But this is Locked On Devils, and before we go anywhere, today's episode is brought to you by the lovely folks over at Game Time. There is nothing like being near the ice during hockey season. I lost my read. Oh my gosh. Game Time's great. The speed, the hits, the atmosphere, it's unmatched. Watching at home is great, but being in the building is a completely different experience. The only thing that used to get in the way was actually getting tickets. Long queues, endless screens, and prices changing at checkout. That's why the Game Time app gives the advantage. Back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NHL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. If you are in Edmonton tonight and want to get out to Devils Oilers on Game Time, you could sit lower bowl, $86 American dollars. And that's a zone deal. You choose the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save even more. The app is incredibly easy to use. Browsing, comparing, and buying tickets took just minutes. Rogers Place has been such a bucket list item. Such a pain in the rear end to get out there, but one of these days for sure. You can get tickets as low as $36 in Edmonton tonight and as low as $25 sometimes for most games. So it makes it easy to plan a game night. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms may apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Once again, this is Locked On Devils. I'm Zach Berman here with Alex Chauvancy. And yeah, let's walk through the finishing woes, because the Devils have been near the bottom or at the bottom of every 5-on-5 scoring stat this season. And while that is completely unacceptable and in some ways responsibility falls on the front office and the general manager, why are guys among the likes of, Jack, at least we know he is coming back from a finger injury, and that can certainly impact shooting, but Nico, Timo, Jesper, what's going on there? Dougie even. Like, why are these pucks not winding up in the back of the net?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. I think just one is the roster doesn't really have any true finishing talent on it. I think the last real true finisher they've had on it was Tyler Toffoli, and they haven't really done anything to replace him since then. So that's a factor. I think if they had Tyler Toffoli on this team and he's having another pretty good season with the San Jose Sharks, I think he would definitely make a difference for them. The other thing is too, I think, is their system is not necessarily conducive to high scoring hockey, even though if you look at some of their 5-on-5 numbers the last 10 to 15 games, they are actually starting to generate more 5-on-5 offense. Still not where it needs to be, but it has gotten better since they've started to get a little healthier. So I don't know. We'll see if they can start breaking the ice a little more often. Right now, I don't have too much confidence in that. But I was talking to Corey Schneider at Shutdown Line on Twitter, who tracks all these games. I think about like a week or two ago, and we were talking a little bit. It was in a conversation on our timeline, so you can probably look this up if you want to see it. But we were just talking about the Devils system, and he was like, it has some of the worst hits of the 2023-24 Toronto Maple Leafs. And what he said was, in short, that the Devils system, the way they play this kind of regroup, reload, kind of like in the neutral zone kind of thing, it has its flaws in that other teams can set up defensively easier on the Devils. So when you're trying to attack through the neutral zone, you kind of forced to play like a dump and chase style game, and that's not necessarily the style of hockey this Devils roster is tailored to. And I've talked to other people who cover the game like much more in depth than me, and it's part also like that they just have a mismatched roster. Like, what do they want to be? Do they want to be this fast attacking rush team, or do they want to be like this kind of grinded out, slower, kind of forechecking team? And if you look at the bottom of their lineup, they look like they would be a slower forechecking team. But if you look at the players at the top of their lineup, like Timo Meier, the Jesper Bratt, the Jack Hughes, all those guys, that's not really their game, even though Nico Hischier is one of the best puck battlers in the NHL. I think he was that stat Mike Kelly shared a couple of days ago. It's like he's second in puck battles won this season. So he can play that kind of game. So I think it's a combination of things. I don't really think it's just one thing that's suppressing the Devils' scoring ability. And it's not like this is just a this season thing too. It was a problem last year as well. So that's why when you look at it, you have to think it's probably not just one thing going on here. To me, I think making a change, I've gone back and forth on making a coaching change. I'm pretty sure it's not going to happen at this point. But I would think that at some point, if this doesn't start working, that if Sheldon Keefe is to remain with the Devils beyond the season, they're going to have to change the way they play a little bit. But they also need to add a true scorer. Like right now, my eyes are set on getting Jordan Kyrou from St. Louis. I feel like if he becomes available, he'd be the top target for the Devils just because his age also fits in really well with the core players. He's 27. He's got, I think, 6 or 7 years left on his contract, and he's a proven 30 to 35 goal scorer. I know he's having a down season with St. Louis this season, but I would take the bet on him bouncing back in a different environment.
Now, do you think the overall state of the roster, the core, is fixable? Is this something that, let's say the Devils fire Tom Fitzgerald and bring in a new GM, which I would expect to be the case if they miss the playoffs? Is this something salvageable that somebody can still come in and build around and turn the Devils back into maybe what they hoped they would be 3 years ago, or is that ship sailed?
Yeah, I definitely think it's salvageable. At some point, I don't think the time is now to trade someone from the core. If there were someone I would trade from the core, it would be Timo Meier, just because he's underproducing his contract so significantly. He's on pace for like 55 points this season, and that's basically where he's been the entire time since the Devils acquired him, and that's not an $8.8 million player. But at the same time, I would like to see him maybe in a different environment and see how he produces. I wouldn't trade Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier yet. I know there's Nico Hischier's. It's coming up. He's eligible for a contract extension this July, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. There's no indication that he doesn't want to sign at this point, but we'll see what happens there. But I think you can, if you get a better supporting cast around this team, I think we know what they can do. That 2022-23 team showed that when you have the right players around them, then everyone kind of like fits perfectly, that they can win 52 games. I mean, that was the best regular season the Devils have had in franchise history, 52 wins and 112 points. So I think if you get the right players around them, I think there's a fix for sure. And I don't think it's like, I don't think the whole roster needs a total overhaul. I think if you just make like a couple of new additions up front, and I think you need a little more puck moving ability on the back end. I think there's too many defensive defensemen back there, too many grenade handlers. They're just not particularly good with the puck on their stick. I think that's something they also need to address, but I don't think they're a lost cause yet. I think that you could definitely turn it around, especially since their main guys, Nico Hischier, just Pratt, Jack Hughes, are all 24 to 27-year-olds still. It's not like they're exiting their primes. They're really just entering it.
So with the contract situation, though, on the back end, who can you really move? I mean, Brendan Dillon, he's on a 3-year deal, so that's done after next year. Kovacevic, his extension just kicked in. Pesce, I think, is such a calming presence, you don't want to get rid of him. So is this the end of maybe Jonas Siegenthaler in Devils uniform? Could we be looking at... I mean, it's a tough situation because I'm a Kovacevic guy. He has that no trade clause that has just kicked in. Of course, everybody has no trade clause at this point. So how do you maybe surgically operate this defensive core and figure out a way to bring a better puck moving guy in, even though, Luke and Nemec, we want them to be those offensive forces on the back end. And we've seen those bits and pieces, but perhaps they aren't where they need to be given what Luke has been making. Of course, now he's sidelined for the foreseeable future. And Nemec, when he's on, but when he's off, you have that play against Seattle a few days ago in overtime where he almost scored on his own net. And I think every Devils fan standing up going, oh my God, what are you doing? I'd like to see him get a run on the top power play unit, though. I think his shot is the most threatening of the group, and that's something I feel like the Devils were missing on the power play with Luke Hughes as the quarterback.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would like to see Nemec or Dougie Hamilton, get some top power play minutes now. I think they're kind of similar defensemen when it comes to shooting the puck. They both have great shots, so I think either one should work there. As far as moving someone from the back end, it would probably be Jonas Siegenthaler getting out of the final year of Brendan Dillon's contract. For me, I think Siegenthaler, he's such an interesting case because it seems like he has one great season, then he follows it up with a terrible season, and then he has another great season. He's kind of a tough defenseman to get a read on. I think how he plays with Kovacevic here these last 35 games or whatever the Devils have left on their schedule, it'll be interesting to see if he can rebound a little bit to close the season. But I think getting out of one of those contracts this coming off season would be the play. I think for me personally, I would probably try to get out of Brendan Dillon's contract because I don't really see the Devils re-signing him after his contract expires. And I think the upside with Siegenthaler is we know when he's on his game, he can be one of the best defensive defensemen in the NHL. He's a little cheaper than Dillon too, and he's also 26, 27 years old too, so he could still have a future with the organization. So if you get out of Dillon's contract and you can find someone who can be, I don't know, I'm thinking like maybe like a Nate Schmidt type of defenseman who can, someone like that, not necessarily him specifically, but someone who's always excelled in like a bottom four role. I think if you can find someone like that for your bottom four and who has a little bit more puck moving ability and mobility, I think that would help this team a lot, especially when it comes to generating 5-on-5 offense, because TJ Totoro talked about this before the season started, that if their back end didn't improve offensively, it was still going to be tough for them to generate 5-on-5 offense. And that's been the case for most of this season already. I think that's why trading Dougie Hamilton for me, you trade Dougie Hamilton, you're losing a lot of your play driving ability from the back end, especially now with Luke Hughes probably done for the foreseeable future. So they need to find someone who can move the puck a little bit better, but they also need Luke Hughes and Nemec to start taking the next step forwards in their development. That would go a long way too, because we know if they ever really reach their potential, that they have the talent to be those types of players for this team in the long run.
Absolutely. I mean, Simone Nemec, the sky is the limit there. And Luke, I've always said it's the Hughes brother thing where they're so God gifted with talent and their minds work so fast where I think you sometimes will see their brains work a split second faster than their bodies, which leads to them trying to do too much and the falling and I still don't know how yesterday happened. I thought, and I was watching on the Calgary feed because here in Jersey, I don't feel like paying for Gotham, and we have Xfinity, so we don't get MSG. And they showed him going down the tunnel. Apparently MSG didn't mention it at all for an entire period.
Yeah, until the beginning of the third period, I think they just mentioned he wasn't on the bench. And then after the game, Bryce, while he was interviewing Sheldon Keefe, he kind of had the realization of what was going on. He's like, oh God, this is terrible.
Yeah, they showed on the Calgary feed, Jack went down into the tunnel to check on him. And I first thought he got hit in the mouth, and I'm like, oh, I think he's getting a couple stitches. He should be fine. That was obviously not the case. And Keefe said this morning after practice that they're still looking at determining the severity of it. And usually when he's that vague, it's not good. But Keefe has also been weird with injuries this year. He's said a couple times, oh yeah, no, we're not going to see someone for a little bit. And then he's back the next day. So
yeah, I mean, I think the thing is now they're probably trying to determine whether he needs surgery. I think when you dislocate your shoulder, I'm sure you know that right away. And now I'm sure they have to get the imaging done, see whether he needs surgery. If he doesn't need surgery, he probably will be back this season. I would imagine that's like a week-to-week thing. But if he needs surgery, I would imagine that's probably shelving him for the rest of the season unless they make some miraculous run to the Stanley Cup. But I think we all know that's highly unlikely at this time. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see because if he does go on season-ending LTIR, they get the full $9 million in cap space to work with. So that could totally change what they need to do as far as trades go. That means if they had anything in the queue or close to happening, they don't necessarily need to trade Dougie or Andre Palat to make it happen for the rest of the season. So, I mean, whatever the timeline ends up being for him, it could make a huge difference as far as trades. I mean, I would still get rid of Andre Palat. Just watching him on the top six every night. He was an anchor last night in Calgary again. I would still move his contract, especially if it frees up, because you're going to need an extra roster space for whoever you're going to acquire, anyways. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think it could change what Tom Fitzgerald wants to do in the coming weeks, especially before the Olympic break. I would imagine if he wants to get something done before the Olympic break, if he could.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's also discounting that Dougie Hamilton likes being here. He doesn't want to leave.
Right. Yeah.
After the way everything went down, but I don't want to move off a guy, and it's weird saying this a week after I basically had a eulogy for his entire Devils tenure on this show. Funny how everything works. But I don't want to get rid of him, even though maybe it's been a down year and maybe the top point getter in New Jersey is 37 points, which is a little bit crazy when you look at who they're playing tonight. And oh my God, McDavid has 85.
Yeah, he's on a crazy point streak. I think I don't remember what the total is, but I think he's averaging almost 2 points per game over his last 20 or 25 games. He's been insane.
He had a play against St. Louis a few nights ago. That was the last game they played where he just dummied 3 separate blues and then up against the boards, backhand saucer right to the front. I think it was Podkolzin who put it home. He's a creative player. He's if you create a player in Shell and max out all their sliders, you get Connor McDavid.
Yeah, exactly.
But we will talk about that on the other side of today. It's a late puck drop, so get your coffee or whatever you use to stay up at night. I don't have a second ad read for today. So, Alex, thank you so much for stopping by. Hopefully it's not the last time you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and I'll definitely drop by again for sure.
Of course. No, it's so awesome to stop by. And yeah, that will wrap it up for today. We'll recap tonight's game tomorrow. And before we go, I'm actually completely different note. I'm going to New Orleans and then Mobile this weekend for the Senior Bowl next week. It's going to be amazing. And this time last year, I was down in New Orleans, and I remember specifically texting you, Justin Dowling is the worst center I've ever seen in my life. And they found someone worse.
Yeah, Dowling would be probably a significant upgrade on Luke Glendening this year. At least Dowling was kind of solid defensively. Glendening is just not really particularly good at anything other than faceoffs. And when he's not winning them, even when he wins them, it doesn't matter. They're still getting killed.
Yeah. Actually, here's a good last question. We've talked about a puck-moving defenseman. We've talked about a top six winger. Who is an ideal third center in this scenario? Let's say you bump Cody Glass down to 4. Who is a 3C that you think slots in well with this roster right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. The one player I've thought about, if the Devils end up trading Dougie Hamilton to the Utah Mammoth, would Mammoth be willing to part with Barrett Hayton? He's had an interesting season himself. He's not scoring at the level he did a season ago. But he was a 20-goal, I think, like 45-point scorer last season. He's an RFA with arbitration rights this coming off season, and with a lot of money already committed to Logan Cooley, and potentially the Mammoth wanting to re-sign Nick Schmaltz, who will be an unrestricted free agent this coming summer. I wonder if the Mammoth aren't necessarily keen on paying Barrett Hayton. It's not like I think he would get a significant pay raise, but if they want to keep Schmaltz there, I'm wondering if that's something that they would be willing to do. I think his age, he's 25, 26 years old, I believe. He fits in perfectly with what the Devils need right now, and he's someone that I wouldn't put in a top 6 role if you don't need to, but if you need to move him up the lineup, he could probably play that role. So I think that's the type of player the Devils should be targeting in general, someone who's in that 25 to 30-year-old range, because all of a sudden, and I wrote about this on my Substack yesterday, all of a sudden they have the 6th or 7th oldest roster in the NHL, and so whatever trades that they make in the next couple of weeks or a few weeks, whatever it is, they need to start getting younger and adding more skilled, because they've added too many players on the wrong side of 30 that were beginning to show their age. And I think going back to the conversation we had about like the finishing woes earlier and stuff, I think that's part of it too. Is you have a bunch of older players who are declining and not what they used to be, and I think that they can't score at the levels that they used to. Players like Palat and Stefan Nason, although I think Stefan Nason's probably more injury-related stuff this year. That's a factor as well. So anybody like Barrett and Hayton who fits in that 25 to 30-year-old range, those are players that the Devils should have on their trade boards.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much, Alex, for stopping by. Once again, this is Locked On Devils, and we will see you tomorrow on the other side of this late back-to-back in Edmonton. So thanks for stopping by. As always, let's go Devils and fire Tom Fitzgerald.